Okay, this first one is going to be a bit of a pile on. Okay.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay, so David Ramos is in here. He's talking about the deferred contract to Snell. It's not a big deal. He's saying, look at all these other deferrals. Examples: Bobby Bonilla deferred $5.9 million in 2000. He gets $1.19 million every July 1st. Bobby Bonilla Day from 2011 to 2035. 8% interest clause. David left a few other examples. He said Ken Griffey with the Reds had a big deferral. Manny Ramirez with the Red Sox had a big deferral, and Max Scherzer, when he signed with the Nationals, had payments deferred till 2028.
We're going to fire you as co-host and hire David as our researcher.
Yeah.
No, that's great. Deferrals are not bad in the modern day money. Understand this, because the gross revenue coming in the front door just goes up and up and up every baseball season. If you have minor deferrals like $1 million a year or $5 million a year, you can probably stomach that. But you start talking about deferrals of $10 million per season, and then you do it for multiple players, that bill adds up. Now, baseball is on a huge upbeat right now in terms of gross revenues. Maybe it'll stay there. But the salary structure is tied to the gross revenues, so everybody's making more money in baseball. So they didn't do anything legally. The union signs off on it. It's part of the collective bargaining agreement, how you structure and how you finance. A lot of people don't realize, we mentioned this way back after the Ohtani signing, even though there's deferred money, which means it doesn't economically count against the luxury tax this year, the Dodgers have to set aside a certain percentage every year of the deferred money.
Mm-hmm.
So the Ohtani deferral doesn't kick in until he retires, I guess. But the Dodgers have to set aside, I think it's $5 to $6 million every year from their cash flow that can't be used. So that money's going into an accessory account that Ohtani will then get.
But $5 to $6 million is a hell of a lot less than $70 million,
yes,
which is what the ticket's going to be. Speaking for myself, I don't have a problem with these teams doing deferrals. I mean, they're setting themselves up for a disaster down the road. But I don't think, it's that, like, to David's point, it's been going on in baseball for decades.
Well, not very often, but it may be the new in thing with these wave of contracts now.
Yeah, well, it's typical of America, man. We want it all now. We want to pay later.
Okay. David, we'll save you a seat here at the table.
Yeah,
you can become our chief researcher. Good job. Thanks for joining us on Fans Forum. Next one.
Okay, let's talk a little NHL here from Manny Fran. He says, Kings destroy our Jets. Did anyone notice, Hacksaw? The rink was empty on screen.
Well, again, if it's happening during a holiday weekend, maybe that's got something to do with it. There is still a lot of concern in Winnipeg being such a small regional market, the fan support. But when the Jets had that unbelievable start, at 1 point 15-1, now they kind of hit a bump in the road. Winnipeg was drawing some pretty good crowds, north of 13,000. I don't know what Winnipeg is going to do in terms of corporate support, because I think there's limitations as to what kind of corporate support. But it's a good product. I say support the product. I'd never like to see the day that we'd see them lose the franchise for a second time. That's how the Arizona Coyotes came to be, as the Winnipeg Jets had to move. So hopefully they'll find a way, they'll solve it. But it is a tough situation. Ottawa is a bit of a tough situation, like Winnipeg, small Canadian market. So we'll see what transpires going forward. But the Jets, a pretty good hockey team right now, even though it's a bit of a bump on the road after the great start.
Hockey's just starting to roll, man. I mean, like you say, everything's going on right now.
Yeah.
Great time in sports.
All right. Thanks for joining us on the O Canada Network.
Okay. From the O Canada Network, Bart is here. He says, hello from Winnipeg, Hacksaw. Thanks for joining WST every week. Look forward to your segment.
Well, they're good guys. I've known them a long, long time. I do NFL Notebook segments in Toronto, in Winnipeg. I've done some in Edmonton and Vancouver. So I do a lot of stuff on Sports Talk Radio north of the border, just NFL Notebook stuff, etc. It was funny. I was on an Edmonton podcast this past week, and their guys, we started talking about the weather for some reason, and they have brutally cold weather. I mean, it is Alaska type winter up in Edmonton, which is in northern Alberta, John. And he was trying to tell me what the temperature was in Fahrenheit. And I said, well, what is that in Celsius? No, it was reverse. He tried to tell me in Celsius. I said, figure it out in Fahrenheit. So he's sitting there trying to figure it out. I said, make sure you carry the one over here. Don't do it by long division. Anyhow, so I do NFL segments a lot of different places.
Yeah. Well, It's interesting though. We're still hanging on to this old imperial measurement system with yards and 90 feet on the bases and everything else. I'm surprised at those kinds of. Well, it's American sports, so it's not necessarily an international standard.
Don't mess with what we have that works. It's popular. Don't change anything.
Well, do you think that the it should be the 100-yard dash in the Olympics, or we go with the meters?
Well, against my objections, it turned out to be 110 meters. Against my objection, the 1 mile, which I used to run, became 1,500 meters. So anyhow, we move on.
We move on. Okay, let's go here to Kenny's water bottle. He says, "Come on, in Canada, folks would laugh if anyone even hinted at the possibility of canceling a football game over snow."
Yeah, it's interesting because they play in all types of weather. Notable, I mean, this time of the year, they just played the Canadian Football League Grey Cup Championship game a week ago. And the Toronto Argonauts with a backup quarterback beat Winnipeg and their star quarterback who got hurt. But they play the end of the season. I mean, winter's there in November. And they played the CFL in snow. And they played the Grey Cup game in unbelievable fog. And I told a story last week. My first introduction as a very young sports fan was on TV watching a CFL game that was in the Canadian Football League Grey Cup. And I think it was the Hamilton Ticats against somebody from out west. And the reason I bring this up is the quarterback that I first saw in the CFL passed away today. His name was Joe Zuger, star quarterback, Hamilton Ticats, two-way player, quarterback and safety. He played at Arizona State. Anyhow, he had a great career in Canada. Then he became the general manager. Then he went to work at the league office. Joe Zuger just passed away. But that was the first Canadian Football League game I ever saw. And I was fascinated not by just 3 downs and a 110-yard field, as they were trying to explain it to us Americans. They played the game in a freaking fog. You could not see anything. And Joe Zuger's throwing passes, and we didn't know if it was completed.
How could he see?
Yeah, he couldn't see either. Well, maybe down on field level you could see, but so that was my introduction to the Canadian Football League. But Joe Zuger, nice guy, passed away today.
Tough one there. But, I just made a list here of some of the NFL games that were in the snow that I remembered. One was the Tuck game, with Tom Brady against the Raiders. Then there was the Leon Lett game. I think that might have been a Thanksgiving Day game.
Yeah, scoop the ball and drop the ball. And
yeah, it was all kinds of goofy stuff there in the snow. And then there was another one where the Dolphins kicker, they got him to sweep the field.
Yeah, it was a New England game.
Okay.
And that led to a rule change. They brought a snowblower on, so I think it was a New England kicker, Jonathan Smith, could kick a field goal. And at that point, there was no rule. All of a sudden, a guy with a little snowblower comes in and they clean off where they're going to spot the ball. Nobody said anything about it. And then next thing you know, that winter, they put a rule and you can't tamper with the field.
Well, that was Belichick doing that, right? I mean,
no, this is pre-Belichick.
Oh, it's before them.
Way back.
Okay.
Yeah. And then, of course, there was an Eagles, you brought it up a week ago. I think it was an Eagles-Bear playoff game in the fog. And I think that was a Randall Cunningham or maybe Donovan McNabb era with the Philadelphia Eagles.
And that was wild. I remember that one. And you just watching on TV, you couldn't see anything.
No. And when I was a kid growing up, I remember a New York football giant Washington Redskins game in a raging blizzard. And this had to be early 1960s. And Sonny Jurgensen was the quarterback, and he was throwing balls that looked like bricks because he couldn't hold it. And I think it wound up being, I don't know, a touchdown, a field goal, and that was all scored. I broadcast one game in a raging blizzard in Denver. Actually, it was the first year of the Chargers and the Redskins. Raging blizzard. And I'll never forget Pat Curran and Jim Laslovic, who both played in the NFL for a long time. I asked him, what's the key to this? And Pat, in his blunt say, just freaking score the first touchdown of the game, you're going to win. And Denver guy took a short punt back in a raging blizzard for a touchdown. And the Broncos won 7-0 final game of the 1987 season. And Pat knew because Pat had played all those games.
That's just got to be so tough. I just imagine being so cold and then getting hit. I mean, that's got to be really tough. Yeah, so many just classic games. So even during the Lions game last night, if I recall, they were showing excerpts from when they played at Tiger Stadium
in the
mud. And I remember that with the NFL. I think that goes back to Kezar Stadium for me. It was San Francisco.
And my broadcast partner on the Chargers game, linebacker Jim Laslovic, he played for Detroit, came out of Penn State, played there, played Green Bay, played with the Chargers. He lost a shoe in the mud. He couldn't find it. And again, this was at, I think it was called Briggs Stadium, which was Tiger Stadium.
Mhm.
And it was a quagmire. So, I mean, there's some great old videos of weather games in the NFL. But you're a sadist. You just can't wait for Buffalo, San Francisco in a blizzard.
Well, it's so funny how the NFL has changed because you always think of the tough guys, the 3 yards in a cloud of dust and the snow. And now everyone's in these posh, like Las Vegas hotels, like the AT&T in Dallas and SoFi here in LA.
Okay, we move on. Thanks for the input.
Okay, let's go here to the O-Siders. And he says, Aztec fast. It'll be Aztec last if we lose to Air Force. How long of a leash in years will Sean Lewis have? Also, your prediction for the game tomorrow. Thanks, Hacksaw.
I gauge how successful a coach is does his team make progress? I'll give you a prime example in the NFL. The Steelers started the season, John, with 2 rental quarterbacks and not much talent. And the Steelers are in first place. Mike Tomlin, better and better and better as they go.
Mm-hmm.
So I gauge a new coach. Have you made enough progress going forward? Sean Lewis, no. They've made no progress at all. In fact, they've regressed. They're 3-8, and they've lost all these games in a row, 5 games in a row. They haven't beaten anybody all season. Now, he's been beset by a lot of injuries, freshman quarterback, awful lot of new faces on the roster. So I don't think he's had any success. I wrote a column this morning. It's on my website. If you're an Aztec fan, tell all your friends to go to my website and read it. Great expectation, greater disappointment. I like the guy, smart guy. He's got to keep this roster intact. He can't have 42 guys go back into the transfer portal like who jumped ship last year. He's got to get the right guys. He's got to fix his offensive line, which was ravaged by injuries, which has really impacted them. So they made no progress at all. He better not be sitting here at 4-8 a year from today, because then people are going to start to raise questions about, yeah, this guy has all these great X's and O's in his 200-page playbook and it doesn't work. So I would hope that next season will be a growth season. If he keeps these kids here, they got a year's experience under the belt, keep that kid quarterback, get more players in here, and then see. But the thing that scares me, they're going to the Pac-12 a year from now. They don't look like a Pac-12 team. You kidding me? They're getting their ass kicked in the Mountain West Conference by everybody.
Yeah.
So I'm really worried about suddenly they're going to be in the Pac-12. They might be a doormat. So we'll just see if Sean Lewis can get more players here. Give him another year. But boy, a year from today, I better not be talking about a 4-8 team.
Well, let's talk about this, because obviously Sean Lewis comes in. The program is at ground zero. Everything was blown up. The roster, everybody left with the exception of a few guys. New recruits, new system, new everything.
And then he had 10 different starting offensive linemen who had never played together. 10.
Yeah. So how much of this do you blame on Sean Lewis as opposed to just being the circumstances? And given that what's going on with the transfer portal and everything else, will the circumstances ever change to give Sean Lewis an opportunity to succeed?
What's his team, his responsibility, his playbook.
Right.
If it doesn't fit, then change the playbook. Make it match what you got on the roster. But he can't control the injuries. So I only blame him to a degree. He just needs to keep his players intact, go get the next round of recruits and transfers that come in, and then build on it. Continuity is hugely important. Brady Hoke was 4-8 his first year when he replaced Chuck Long, and that was a freaking disaster.
Chuck.
But they got progressively better and better.
They did.
Rocky Long, better and better, to the point there was a higher standard. Well, Sean Lewis has not met that standard at all, but there's so many variables there that cause this mess to happen. This is the first, I swear to you, this is the first Aztec fans forum contribution we've had maybe since early in the season, which is another warning sign, blinking light, like town doesn't care. That's sad.
I got an Aztec story to share with you. I didn't tell you this. Is that, obviously the fans that watch the podcast, and thank you for everybody for watching and listening. Some of them, you're the star. This is your show, but sometimes they find me on social media as your wingman. And I got contacted by a guy, I think his name is Michael, and longtime Aztecs season ticket holder, going back to the 1990s and the WAC days. And he was saying, come on, guys, you got to quit bagging on this program. This is a good program. They can build this. You're saying that the tickets are too expensive. No, you can get into that stadium for $30-35 for some of the nosebleed seats. It's still a good product or a good not really a product, but it's a good opportunity for San Diego.
Yep.
So quit sandbagging these guys and give them credit, give them some hope.
I had a lot of hope when the season started because I thought Sean Lewis is a real bright light. Hasn't worked out for a wide variety of reasons. Snapdragon's kind of cool. I do think the prices are way too expensive. But that's for them to admit we made a mistake and fix it, sort it out. But blows my mind is this is an NFL city, and all these fans were displaced like we all were when we all got screwed by Spanos and the Chargers. And those fans never put their arms around Brady Hoke's team when they were winning. And now they've totally disappeared because they're losing.
It's San Diego, man. This is a tough sports market, man. It's tough.
Now, good point. Give them an opportunity. It is a great experience, but I wish they'd changed the ticket prices structure. And I just hope Sean Lewis can weather the storm. And bright guy, I think he will, because he did at Kent State, and Kent State was horrible. And since he left, Kent State was just finished 0-12. They got beaten in their final game last night. They were not competitive at all. And he left. He left 2 years ago, and they've just been deplorable. So this guy has a track record of X's and O's success, which should lead to success watching games. But at this point, they look so far away from being a legitimate Pac-12 team. I'm not begging them. I'm just giving you the facts and figures and what I see.
Tell it like it is.
According to Howard Cosell.
Howard Cosell. Yeah. Okay. Let's go back. Kenny has some insight here on this whole Biz situation in Scottsdale. It's a two-parter. And he says, all 6 guys look worse in the police pics than Biz, who had a couple of scratches on his head. If one guy asks a group if they like to step outside, should probably wonder if that guy can fight.
Well, they weren't hockey fans.
Okay. Well, then he goes on to say, he says, FYI, it was 7 guys. Cops arrested 6. 1 guy ran off. I'm sure they'll get him. But Biz took on 7 guys himself. Biz came out looking better than all of them. Quick pit stop at the hospital.
Yeah, and I've seen some pictures on social media of all 6 guys. And you're right, yeah, they look like they got a few black eyes along the way. But, Bissonnette he was a policeman on the ice. That's who he was. That's how he played. That's how he talks on TV. So I'm sure this weekend on TNT, it'll be a conversation point of, hey, how did your Thanksgiving holiday go?
I just have a vision in my head of like Chuck Norris, getting like mobbed by 6 guys and he's just taking them all out.
No, it's just absolutely amazing. Hey, thanks for joining us.
Okay, let's go here to Chris. And he says, happy bleeping Thanksgiving, you two. Thankful for you, John, for putting our beloved mighty Hacksaw back on the air where he belongs.
Yeah, that's right. Blame him. It's his bloody fault that I'm back doing this now. The podcast is exploding. And, we're on every social platform there is right now. So we're just trying to grow to things, but you can help us a lot. We don't have any friends. I have no problem asking for a thumbs up, and I have no problem having you post 5 stars. God, if everybody gave us a 5-star rating on YouTube, do you know how much it would really help us?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's the 5 stars, though, by the way, is Apple Podcasts. But people just doing a like or a love, that helps the algorithm because, every social media platform is dependent on engagement. So the more people that like or love or, give us a thumbs up, the better. Let's go to social media. We got a bunch of other guys here that want to get involved. And let's talk here about the TV or about the hot seat. Yeah, this is one you brought up about which NFL coach is going to be the first to be let go. He says Coach Prime to the NFL, especially the Cowboys, would be a big mistake.
Well, Michael Irvin has been talking for 2 weeks nonstop about Coach Prime coming to Dallas if they hit the eject button on Mike McCarthy. But Jerry Jones said twice this week in different interviews that Mike McCarthy is a Super Bowl winning coach. Mike McCarthy's been plagued by terrible injuries to our defensive side. Then we lost our quarterback. He said, I would not be averse to bringing Mike McCarthy back. So maybe that ends all that conversation of Coach Prime or Belichick or the next bright light offensive coordinator like Dan Lanning in Oregon landing in Dallas. Because Jerry Jones obviously is on the same wavelength with Mike McCarthy and is not blaming Mike McCarthy for the demise of the season just because they got so many guys who were hurt. I mean, their whole defense had 16, I counted going into last night's game, they had 16 major injuries on defense. Nobody survives that. And you saw what Micah Parsons did in this Thanksgiving night game, totally healthy. That makes a huge difference to everybody else. So,
well, you think like a coach like Prime with all of his personality, Does that work better in college than it does in the pros? I think.
Oh, I'm sure it works much better at Boulder, Colorado than it would in any National Football League stop.
Yeah.
And the thing is, Coach just got one of the top quarterbacks in the country who decommitted from USC is going to Colorado. And of course, Shadur Sanders, Travis Hunter are filing for the NFL draft after they play in a bowl game. And Colorado was winning today. So Colorado might be on the periphery of actually being in the college playoffs rather than just going to a bowl game. It'd be fascinating to see who winds up. If Colorado's not in the playoffs, Colorado is a marquee team for bowls. Could you imagine the excitement if Coach Prime brought the Buffaloes here to the Holiday Bowl?
Hey, that'd be all right.
Yeah, because the Holiday Bowl agreement, can be with somebody that used to be in the Pac-12. And so
Interesting.
So we'll see.
Well, I saw the score earlier today. It was 38-0 at one point over Oklahoma State.
Yeah, Shadur Sanders set the all-time passing record at CU today.
Good for him.
He's a really fine player.
And now he's a third-year player, right?
Yeah, he's going to the draft. So is Travis Hunter. They might be, both of them might be picked in the top 5, I would think.
And Hunter maybe the Heisman Trophy?
He's in the running. But, you've got him, you got Shadur, you got the Miami quarterback Cam Ward, you got the Boise State running back Ashton Gentry. So it's a wide open Heisman race.
Yeah.
I haven't got my ballot yet.
That's right. You get to vote.
I get to vote, it's going to be complicated. I can't tell you who I'm going to vote for because I don't know who I'm going to vote for, and I can't leak it beforehand. But there's some really good players and a lot of different track records.
Have you ever been to the New York Athletic Club?
No, I have not. No.
Interesting.
Yeah. I've been to the College Football Hall of Fame, which is really cool. Yeah, so much. They have classes. They admit like 31 guys a year. I say, how do you admit that many? But there's college football been played forever and ever. And the Hall of Fame encompasses not just the big time. It encompasses all the way down to Division III.
Yeah, Canton, right?
Yeah.
Does it all.
Yeah. So it's great. No, the College Football Hall of Fame, Indianapolis, I believe.
But maybe it's the basketball one that's just not NBA exclusive.
Yeah, that's
the one in Springfield.
Right.
Okay, so but the Canton, Ohio Hall of Fame is NFL only?
Yes.
Interesting. Okay.
All right, we move on. Thanks for the comments.
Okay, let's go here. They're talking about the TV deal, and this got a ton of run on our YouTube segments. This is from Philip. He says, this is long overdue for baseball. He goes, as a Yankee fan, I hope they and the other big market teams are somehow forced to join up. A universal and truly equal package would rule. If baseball could function like football and have parity, it would be the most exciting thing since the addition of the wild card.
The only problem is I just don't know how baseball is going to mandate to the Yankees they have to give up the Yes Network, or the Dodgers, who are making a phenomenal amount of money, $340 million a year for their big regional network, or NESN in Boston, which has been in place for a long time. I just don't know how that the commissioner's office can mandate you got to give this up for the good of the sport. I just don't think that'll happen. But if you do get the other 25 teams, which is what, in all honesty, Rob Manfred's proposal is by 2008, when all of our TV contracts expire, we're going to take control of the streaming of all 25 other teams, and we will form a massive streaming network that can generate a lot of money. Maybe that's a solution. And then they would carve up that piece of the pie and give it to just the 25 teams. They would then negotiate some sort of revenue share from the 5 who have their own regional networks. They would still get money flowing from there into this pot. Baseball has taken a huge tick up in terms of attendance. TV ratings have rocketed. It's fastly becoming a global game. Thank you, Shohei Ohtani. And of course, prior to that, a lot of the Japanese and Korean pitchers who've come here. But now, year by year, there are more stars coming from abroad that are playing. So it's become a really great global game, including everything in Latin America and the Caribbean. So they've got a plan. We'll see if they can work. But all honesty, getting back to what you had to say, Philip, I just don't think you convince the Red Sox to give up the amount of money they're making from NESN, or the Dodgers from the Yankees, Mets, etc.
Yeah, that's a tough ask. But I'm thinking in my head with the Mountain West and Boise State, where imagine if they got the Yankees and the Red Sox and the Dodgers all to agree to join, but you'd have to kind of pay them extra money.
The bigger markets, they get a bigger share.
Right. And just like Boise State and the Mountain West. And you can't keep that up for too long. I mean, you'd have to wind that down after like 5 or 7 years.
I just don't think the Yankees are going to give up where they are on SNY.
Yeah, I mean, if as from a business perspective, why would you?
And you're a capitalist. How dare you would ever even bring that up and think about it? Good point, though, Philip. Thanks for being with us.
Okay, let's talk a little Dodgers and Juan Soto. This is from Tyler. Because the Dodgers don't need him. They just gladly driving up the price for the team that ends up securing him. The guy hits for power and average, and that's about it. Nobody's going to the ballpark solely to see Juan Soto and those Padres antics at the plate. The Dodgers need the liability out, or don't need the liability out in right field. He's horrible in that regard.
I think the side story after what just happened with Blake Snell going to Dodger Stadium is, what do they do in the outfield? Teoscar Hernandez had that 1-year rental great season, 33 homers, 99 ribbies. He wants 3 years, 90 million. He wants 30 mil per on a multi-year contract. He's not a young pup. Now, my left hand says they really need Teoscar Hernandez in the lineup and in the outfield. But my right hand says, man, that's a volume of money for an older player. Are you going to do that? And how high can their payroll be? I do think they're in the running for Sasaki, but they're going to need an outfielder if Teo goes somewhere else, because Teoscar Hernandez was talking to the Orioles. He's also talking to the Red Sox, who need a right-handed bat at Fenway Park. But there's so many names in the mix. Nolan Arenado is out there. So there's other guys that may impact where Teoscar goes. So it's fascinating to see. I think he's going to be a New York guy. I see the Yankees or Mets. And then, once that decision is made, and we think it's going to be made by next Friday, once that decision is made, then what happens to Pete Alonso? What happens to Alex Bregman? Because the next tier of free agents are pretty good ball players who are all going to get nice pay raises. Not $40 million per season, but they're going to get big pay bumps. So once the first domino Soto falls, I think it opens up the logjam and other guys will start to move quick.
Well, normally that's true, but we've had a lot of signings before Soto, like, the Angels getting all those number 4 starters.
Yeah, but those are just guys.
Yeah, those are guys that are just kind of sweeping up. It's just the Dodgers had the top payroll last year and they won the World Series.
The Mets had the top payroll.
Oh.
I think the Dodgers were 3rd or 4th, but they were still, they were LA high.
They were way up there, but there's been so many cases of teams in every sport putting together these superstar teams and then failing, so the Dodgers figured out a way to make it work.
And they survived all the injuries. That's people lost in the equation of, I hate the Dodgers or Dave Roberts didn't do a good job or blah, 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 blah. They got the World Series ring. They had to use 29 different pitchers last season. They got the World Series ring. They used 13 different starters because of the injuries. They got the World Series ring. They had 9 major pitching surgeries alone, and they still got the World Series ring. That's phenomenal. And now you add Blake Snell to the equation.
It is mind-blowing. I mean, and we, as a Padre fan, we thought that they were on the cusp, the Dodgers, of losing, and then they flipped it and just ran the table.
Padres 1 win away at home on a bullpen day. I thought for sure Padres are going to win.
I agree.
They're going to beat the Mets, and they'll go face the Yankees, and the Yankees were eminently beatable too, and they let it get away from them. So here's the burning question for those of you who love baseball. So the Padres they're sitting there right now with a payroll of maybe 170 mil. They've not made any moves of significance. They did sign one outfielder on Thursday. Oscar Gonzalez, who once was a pretty good power-hitting minor league outfielder with the Indians, or the Guardians, ran into some trouble. No, it's the Indians. As far as I'm concerned, it's the Indians. You don't like it? Tough crap. Yeah, Chief Wahoo. That's right. But the Padres now have the opportunity. If you got budget space to go get a pitcher, would you want Flaherty, Buehler, or Sasaki? Which one of the 3 would you get? Because
Sasaki.
Yeah,
because Buehler, I don't know if I can count on that guy. I mean, he had a nice run on the World Series, but I'm not sure about him. Flaherty wasn't he kind of a punk during some of those games? Was chirping back at Machado.
Oh, nonstop.
Yeah,
I'm sorry, I call him a red ass, but that night that's the way he acted. But he still pitched really well. Now, is he? He's not a $30 million a year guy. Maybe he's a $21 million a year guy. But he's come back from arm problems. He was tremendously popular in St. Louis. I mean, his future was ahead of him, and he was doing very well. And he got hurt, and then he went to Baltimore, and he struggled. He went to Detroit and reinvented himself. And then he got traded to the Dodgers, and the Dodgers would not have been playing had it not been for a lot of the quality starts Flaherty gave him. So, but he's not a $30 million a year guy. But see, I'm speaking from a Southern California standpoint. Padres, go sign one. Angels, go sign the other two, because that would give them great credibility.
Oh yeah, the Angels need to do something. They need a number one and to go with all those number fours. And by the way, when I say a guy, when I call him a punk, it's a funny thing. It's like I like it when guys are active and chirping and playing up all this other out the nonsense around the outside the lines. I enjoy that drama. So when I call a guy a punk, what I really mean is he's a guy you hate when they're on the other team, but you'd sure love to have him on your team.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and so and that's how I felt about, you know, I call that, who would also punks? Jock Peterson was a punk. There's a bunch of them
until he got to the Giants and he was one of yours.
Yeah, and then you're like, hey, this guy ain't bad, you know. But when he was wearing those pearl necklace out in Atlanta, that was a punk move.
Tyler, thanks for being with us. Let's do a couple more here before we cap this thing off.
All right, let's talk a little bit about the NIL, and this is with a San Diego State discussion from Mark. He goes, players are not the property of coaches or schools. No need for a new owner or school to compensate an old owner or school when players decide to transfer schools. I have a better idea. Offer players multi-year NIL deals so that they are contractually bound to a school. Schools can include a buyout on a contract. If players want to bet on themselves, they don't have to sign a multi-year NIL deal.
It's novel. It's different. He, of course, is reacting to Sean Lewis's statement to me a week ago that they're going to go to the coaches' convention and say, we need to put in place a compensation package that if a Power 4 conference takes our top player from a group of 5, we get compensated. Now, we don't know what the dollar value is. That money would go into the NIL pool. We don't know whether the conference would pay it, University of Washington would pay it, the NCAA would pay it. That's all to be sorted out. But he says he's going to put that proposal up when they go to the coaches' convention. But how do you enforce it? Because every time you try to enforce something at the NCAA level, you get a lawsuit. You know, the reason we have the NIL and then we have the transfer portal, it's under the umbrella of players' rights. These players are suing for everything that they felt they should have had for years upon years upon years. The big money issue to me has really hurt the sport. I think it's soured it. It's left a bad taste in my mouth. I mean, when you got players driving better cars than coaches are driving now because of this volume of money that's being funneled. And it's all because of the court system. It's all because the NCAA did not take care of the players for decades upon decades. But somewhere along the way, it's got to stop because I think it's been very, very destructive. I think the money issue has allowed us to see the marquee Oregon States or Oregon, Ohio States. But nobody gives a damn about the bottom 2/3 of the other teams in the conference now. They've all been lost because the only people care about is seeing Alabama and Clemson or Ohio State, Oregon, Michigan, et cetera. So they got to get this thing under control.
Now, coaches like Lincoln Riley are making what, like 6, 7, 10 million? 10 million.
He's making 10.
He's probably driving a better car than most of the guys on his team, right?
Yeah. I walked through that garage at San Diego State on the way to the weekly press conferences. I will tell you, I've never seen such volume of luxury cars. And those are not professors who are parking in that garage. Those are athletes.
So you seeing like Mercedes and BMW, or are you seeing like Lamborghinis and the fancy
I've seen
cars?
some Jaguars and I've seen some real state-of-the-art SUVs.
Really?
And trucks.
Nice.
I mean, jacked up trucks.
Well, good for those kids, you know? I mean, they're getting paid.
It's not the chemistry professor's truck.
No, the chemistry professor ain't. Well, chemistry professors typically drive an Aztec. Remember that? Did you ever watch Breaking Bad?
No.
Oh,
not
what
much.
a great show. It was a chemistry professor, and his car was an Aztec, which is kind of funny. The other thing I wonder, just thinking creatively, imagine if deferrals got into the NIL business.
No, stop
that
it.
would the whole thing would even get worse and more murky.
Yeah. I think within a year's time, this thing is going to be focused and handled a little bit better, whether the NCAA gets the antitrust exemption, which will allow them to take full control of this and handle it differently. The money's here to stay. It's the disproportion of the money. And, you know, it's deathly. I would not want to be a coach in a group of 5 conference. I would not want to be a coach in a 1AA school because now you're almost guaranteed if I cite, select, and coach this kid up, he's going to get taken. I mean, look at San Diego State. They had 12 transfers who went to true Division I programs, had 42 transfers in all. Sean Lewis lost all his players. And it's happening, I swear to you, every group of 5 conference school is getting rated every year. and you have a great player at Western Michigan, he's going to be in the Big Ten next year. It's just the way that the system's allowed to operate. I don't think it's good for the game.
It's happening in basketball too.
Sure.
I mean, Micah Parrish at Ohio State, Lamont Butler's at Kentucky, and then who's the other one? Elijah Saunders at Virginia.
Yep.
But yet Dutcher keeps building it, which is great.
But that's maybe the odd happenstance because it's not happening everywhere.
Right.
You get cherry-picked, you lose your players.
The whole thing is changing, and it's weird, though, that even at San Diego State, the money is just so much lower than a lot of these other NIL collectives.
Oh, yeah, for the Mountain West, San Diego State's got one of the best collectives in basketball. But compare San Diego State's pool of money to Kentucky or anybody else. Like I say, those guys are driving better cars than the coaches are driving.
Now, Lamont Butler's gotten off to a good start of a season, by the way.
Very good.
Okay.
Let's do one more here.
Let's talk about the Tampa Stadium. This is with Upsox. He says, if I lived in St. Petersburg and my county raised the partial or half the money, I want the team to be named after my city. Is Tampa contributing anything to this deal? If a billionaire wants to build a castle, build it himself by securing the property and money necessary for the development and construction of the stadium.
Well, the new stadium is to be built on the other side of the bridge in St. Petersburg. St. Petersburg had committed about $318 million. Pinellas County had committed like $325 million. Then the hurricanes hit. And then the new members of city council said, whoa, we're supposed to vote on this public funding that goes into the pool. And the Rays are paying a significant amount. Rays are paying, I want to say, $1 billion themselves. It's not a free gift. But suddenly, city council in St. Petersburg said, we lost our water system in this hurricane. We have terrible infrastructure, power grid problems. We have terrible problems with roads washed out, etc. We in good conscience can't take taxpayer money and give it to the Tampa Bay Rays so they can get their stadium built. We got to take care of the population base. I understand that. So then Tampa Bay comes back and says, well, if you delay this vote, that's going to delay another year the construction of the stadium, and the costs are going to get more. It'll be more than a $1.6 billion stadium. And the city and county said, we're not going to vote. We're taking our money back because we got to fix everything that's wrong with the hurricane's cost here. It's a calamity beyond belief. And Tampa Bay, the Rays can't play for the next 4 years in a minor league stadium in the heat and humidity and the rain. And that's a lot what happens on the Sun Coast. So I still think if I were king, I would say, okay, this has not worked in Tampa. You don't have the funding. We'll let you move. Go to Montreal or Nashville, which wants to build a stadium. So they can't play 4 years outdoors in Tampa in a minor league stadium. It's just not the union. I don't think will allow it.
Players would be melting on the field. I can't, I agree with you. I think that they may need to go to another city, and Montreal would be wonderful to get them back in. But it's interesting is, granted we have inflation and everything's gotten more expensive over the decades, but it seems like stadiums have disproportionately gotten more expensive than the rate of inflation because they're not just a place with a bunch of seats in the field in the middle.
It's steel, it's cement, it's the infrastructure, it's the cost.
Yeah, but then it's also so posh inside, with the tile marble floors and these really high-end restaurants and bars, and it's a whole different thing.
It's a different game. It's a big business thing right now.
Yeah.
But the landscape has also changed. Once upon a time, owners used to walk around, give me my money, build me the stadium and give me the lease to the stadium. Well, it doesn't happen anymore. Now it's a joint situation. This Tampa thing was workable up until this point, till the hurricanes, back-to-back hurricanes just devastated those areas. And I understand it. So we'll see where it goes. Tampa Bay's in big trouble. They're going to play next year. They're going to play outdoors. It's going to be miserable for these players.
Yeah. I don't know if it works in Tampa, all the old people watch it on TV.
They are right now. I think it'll work better in Montreal because Olympic Stadium is in the process. They're about 60% through the renovation of Olympic Stadium. So that'll be a much nicer place and a place that wants Major League Baseball back. And the economics in Quebec and in Canada are different now than they were when the Expos vacated and became the Washington Nationals. Hey, listen, we thank you for being part of this podcast.